I want you to picture the dream. You know the one.
Oh, I think I do.
You walk into a room, the air is just heavy with the smell of old paper and beeswax, and the walls are lined, just floor to ceiling, with these dark wooden shelves just groaning under the weight of leather-bound books.
Yes.
It's that quintessential witch's library.
It's a very romantic image.
Yeah.
Sort of the cinematic version of magic that we've all, internalized from movies.
Exactly. It's the aesthetic we're all secretly chasing. But then, snap back to reality. You pull out your phone, you open TikTok, or you walk into the metaphysics section of a mega bookstore, and what do you actually see? It's a flood.
Oh, just a flood.
It's neon covers, bestseller stickers, completely conflicting advice, and thousands of voices telling you that this specific paperback is the only way to manifest your best life.
It is so overwhelming. And honestly, it's a bit dangerous for a practice that's supposed to be so personal.
Yeah.
And that's really why we're doing this deep dive today. We're unpacking a guide called Crafting the Grimoire, which it tackles this exact problem. It's not about how to buy more books. It's about discernment.
Right, because the goal isn't just to hoard books that look cool on a shelf.
Although that is fun.
Though I admit I am guilty of that sometimes.
Yeah.
The mission here is to curate a functional toolkit. We're looking at how to sift through all that noise, dodge the misinformation, and build a library that actually supports critical thinking.
And that phrase, critical thinking, that's really the anchor for today. The source makes a really compelling argument that while witchcraft is often described as an experiential practice based on intuition and feeling,
Right.
it is also a learned practice. You need a framework.
This is a tension I see discussed all the time. There's this camp that says magic is all intuition, just do what feels right. And then the other camp is like, no, you have to read the dusty tomes.
And the source here seems to be trying to bridge that gap.
It really is.
It is. The argument isn't that books replace intuition. It's that books sharpen it.
Okay.
Think of it this way. You might have an intuitive sense of how to cook, but reading a book on food science gives you the vocabulary to understand why adding acid balances the flavor.
So it gives you a language for the experience.
Exactly. And language is a tool of control, and I mean that in a good way. If you can name a spiritual phenomenon, you can navigate it so much better than if it's just some vague feeling.
Okay, so let's get into the architecture of this library. The source breaks this down into categories, starting with the foundation. And obviously we have to start with beginner books, but this is a minefield. I feel like 90% of what's out there is just fluff or a regurgitated Wikipedia article.
That is a very generous estimate. The source suggests that a good beginner book has a very specific job to dismantle fear and superstition, not create more of it.
So we're avoiding the fear-mongering, do this or you're cursed vibe.
Precisely. The vetting criteria here are interesting. First, does it explain why? If a book is just wrapped in riddles to sound mystical, it's not teaching you anything. It's performing for you. Second, is the language inclusive? And third, and this is the big one, does it emphasize personal choice over dogma?
That's the key. A beginner book should be a ramp, not a cage.
Exactly.
If page 1 says, this is the one true way and everything else is wrong, you can probably just put it right back on the shelf.
It's all about agency. The source argues that a foundational text should give you a structure like, say, the skeleton of a house, but it should encourage you to hang the drywall and paint it yourself.
Okay, now, moving to the second pillar of the foundation, and this is one I think people groan at because it feels like homework. History.
Oh, yeah.
The source is pretty adamant that you can't skip the history class.
It is, and for a really good reason. There is a lot of fake lore in magical communities.
Fake lore. I like that.
Yeah, we're talking about myths that sound ancient, like the specific numbers of people killed in the witch trials, or this idea of an unbroken lineage of the old religion that were actually popularized or, invented in the 1950s or 70s.
Right, like the whole burning time statistics being way inflated, or the Murray thesis. It's romantic, but it's not historically accurate.
Exactly. And the source argues that knowing the real history separates myth from fact. It grounds your practice. I mean, if you base your entire spiritual identity on a historical inaccuracy, your foundation is shaky.
And there's also the angle of appropriation, which the source hits hard.
Yes. History is the antidote to appropriation. When you study the origins of a practice, Whether that's smudging or yoga or specific folk magic, you learn who developed it, why they developed it, and crucially, whether it was meant to be shared or if it's closed.
So it stops you from treating magic like a buffet where you just grab whatever looks tasty without knowing any of the ingredients.
It's about respect.
It's about respect and context. Context changes everything.
It does.
Okay, so we've laid the foundation with solid beginner texts and actual history. Now let's get to the fun part. The tools of the trade.
Yes.
The source starts with herbalism and green witchcraft.
This is a favorite category for so many people, but the source makes a critical distinction that I think is often overlooked.
Which is?
The difference between magical herbalism and medical herbalism.
Oh, I thought this was such an important point because a lot of books just kind of conflate the two. They'll say lavender is for peace, which is the magical correspondence, but then imply it'll cure your anxiety disorder, which is a medical claim.
Or worse, they deal with toxicity.
Hmm.
In folklore, plants like belladonna or monkshood are powerful magical allies, but biologically,
They can kill you.
they can kill you. The source warns that responsible books clearly separate the spirit of the plant from the chemistry of the plant.
So, if a book tells you to brew a tea with a toxic herb because it's traditional for a vision quest, but doesn't mention that it might, I don't know, stop your heart.
That is a massive, massive red flag. A good herbal, according to this guide, respects the biology first. It should cover safety, interactions with medications, sustainable harvesting. It's not just about vibes. It's about botany.
Okay, moving from plants to the mechanics of magic. Spells, candles, rituals, the practical stuff. The source has a bit of a critique here for what it calls recipe books.
You know the ones. To attract money, take a green candle, light it at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, and say these exact rhyming words.
Look, I'll be honest, I own a few of those. They're comforting. It's like a magical meal kit. You just follow the instructions.
They are easy, but the source argues they don't actually teach you magic. They teach you to follow instructions. The insight here is that you want books that provide frameworks, not just recipes.
Frameworks. So, explaining the mechanics?
Exactly. Why green? Why
Yeah.
Thursday? Why those words? When you understand the symbolism and the structure, you can swap things out. You become the chef, not just the person reheating the dinner.
That makes so much sense. It allows for improvisation. If I don't have a green candle, but I understand the principle of abundance, I can use a gold one or a coin or whatever I have.
Precisely. And the source also mentions that good practical books emphasize consent. Ethics aren't separate from the spell work. If a book is teaching you to manipulate others without their knowledge, it's guiding you toward a very specific and ethically murky type of practice.
That leads us right into divination tarot, runes, astrology. Again, there's a flood of books here.
Oh yeah.
What does the Three of Swords mean? Will I get the job?
The trap here is dependency. The source suggests that weak divination books position the cards of the stars as these like external authorities that dictate your fate. The card said I shouldn't go out, so I won't.
Right, it becomes a crutch.
It does. The expert insight from the text is that strong divination books treat these tools as mirrors, not crystal balls. They should encourage introspection.
Ah.
They shouldn't just predict the future. They should help you understand your present so you can create your future.
I love that distinction. Mirrors, not crystal balls. It puts the power back on the practitioner.
Which is really the theme of this whole guide, isn't it?
It is. And speaking of looking in the mirror, we have to talk about the category the source calls the hidden category.
Right.
These are books that usually aren't even in the witchcraft section of the bookstore. They're in self-help or psychology.
Shadow work and inner healing.
Now, I have seen this term shadow work thrown around on social media until it's lost all meaning. But the source takes it very seriously. Why is a book on trauma awareness considered a grimoire essential?
Because the operator of the magic matters more than the tool. The source argues that magic without self-work leads to spiritual bypassing.
That's when you use spiritual language to avoid dealing with your actual psychological issues, right? Like, I'm not angry, I'm just protecting my energy, when actually you're just repressing rage.
Exactly that. Or trying to manifest a new relationship when you haven't healed the attachment patterns that sabotaged the last 5. The source argues that books on emotional regulation, trauma, accountability, they're necessary to ground the practice. They ensure you're operating from a place of clarity, not projection.
It's like operating heavy machinery. You wouldn't want someone operating a crane if they were hallucinating or emotionally unstable. Magic is the heavy machinery.
That is a perfect analogy. These books are the safety manual for the operator.
Then there's the category of cultural and tradition-specific books, We touched on this with history, but this is more about specific paths, Wicca, hedge witchcraft, regional traditions, or closed practices like voodoo or certain indigenous traditions.
And the source is very, very firm here regarding boundaries. It comes back to that appreciation versus appropriation discussion.
Mm.
The rule of thumb provided is pretty clear. Study closed traditions only if you belong to them or if you have been explicitly invited into them.
And how does a reader know? Because sometimes books are packaged to look accessible to everyone.
Well, ethical authors will state those boundaries clearly. If a book claims to teach you the secrets of a closed culture, and the author has no connection to that community, that is a massive red flag.
Right.
It's likely selling you a watered-down, commodified version of something sacred.
So we've got these categories, but now we're standing in the bookstore or scrolling online, and we have to make choices. The source offers what it calls a curation strategy. How do we actually vet these books before we buy them?
They offer a litmus test, and it's centered on two opposing forces, empowerment versus control.
Oh.
You have to ask, does this text want to empower me to think for myself, or does it want to control my behavior?
We see the control aspect a lot in what I'd call cult-light literature.
Yes. Does it use fear? If you don't do it this way, it will backfire. Does it promise instant power or claim to be the one true path? Those are the red flags. Real magic, according to our source, builds responsibility. It implies that you have to do the work.
Not the become a supreme witch in 30 days kind of book.
Run away from that one fast.
There's also a practical debate the source weighs in on, which I found really validating, the format.
Oh, yeah.
Physical books versus digital books. There's so much gatekeeping that says if it's not a dusty hardcover, it doesn't count.
Which just ridiculous. The source takes a very pragmatic view here. Physical books have a tactile advantage. They're great for rituals because they hold a sort of grounding energy. You can write in the margins, and importantly, they don't have notifications.
There is nothing that kills a meditative trance faster than a glowing screen buzzing with an email from your boss.
Exactly. It breaks the immersion. However, the source really defends digital books for research.
Okay.
They're searchable, they're portable, and often much more affordable. I mean, if you live in a small apartment, you might not have space for a wall of wonders.
So the verdict is mix and match. Use physical books for the altar and digital books for the subway commute.
Both have value. The magic isn't in the paper, it's in the information.
I appreciate that permission. But even with digital books, this list, history, herbs, spells, shadow work, it sounds expensive and exhausting. I can see a listener thinking, I need to buy 20 books right now.
And that is exactly what the source advises against. They call it the slow build. You do not need everything today. In fact, buying everything at once usually means you read nothing.
It becomes sundoku, that Japanese word for piling up unread books.
Yeah. The source suggests a starter pack. Just 4 books.
4, okay.
One solid beginner guide,
Yeah.
one history book, one practical magic book, and one shadow work book. That's it.
That feels so much more manageable.
It allows you to actually absorb the material. A library is supposed to grow as you grow. It's a reflection of your journey, not a shopping spree.
Okay, we've built the foundation, we've got the tools, we've checked our heads with shadow work, but the source saves the biggest twist for the end. The ultimate text, the most important book in the entire library.
Yes, and it's the one book you cannot buy.
It's the grimoire, or the Book of Shadows, that you write.
The blank notebook. The source emphasizes that while published books are the maps, your personal journal is the record of the actual territory.
There's a concept here that really stuck with me. Books teach you how to listen. Your practice teaches you what to write.
It's a beautiful sentiment. It reinforces that you are the final authority. You can read 10 books on how to cast a circle, but the way you cast a circle, the way it feels, the results you get, the modifications you make, that is the real magic.
It's about synthesis. You take the history, the herbal safety, the spell frameworks, and you filter them through your own life and intuition. The output, what goes into your notebook, is unique to you.
And that is what makes it a grimoire. It's a living document of your power, not just a collection of other people's thoughts.
So let's bring this all together. We started with the aesthetic fantasy, but we realized that a functional library is about discernment.
Right.
We need a foundation that separates fact from fake history. We need tools that respect safety and ethics.
We need to contextualize our magic with self-work, so we aren't just projecting our issues onto the universe. And we need to spot the red flags of dogmatism and fear.
And ultimately, we need to realize that we are the authors of the most important text in the collection.
It shifts the mindset from being a consumer of magic to being a practitioner of it. And that
Yeah.
is the crucial leap.
Now, before we let you go raid your bookshelves with this new perspective, I want to leave you with a final thought. We've talked a lot about acquiring books, but the source touches on the life cycle of a library in a way I want to push a little further.
Let's hear it.
We tend to think of a library as a static monument. You buy a book, you keep it forever. But if we are treating this as a functional toolkit for a living practice, shouldn't the library be alive too?
Like an ecosystem?
Exactly.
Yeah.
An ecosystem requires pruning just as much as it requires planting.
Hmm.
If you have a book on your shelf that you bought 5 years ago and every time you look at it you feel guilty because you haven't read it, or it represents a path you're no longer interested in, isn't that just energetic clutter?
That is a profound question. If a book no longer serves your evolved intuition, keeping it might actually be blocking new growth.
Right. Maybe the most magical thing you can do for your library this week isn't buying something new. Maybe it's taking a book off the shelf, thanking it for what it taught you or for showing you what you don't want, and releasing it.
That is a wonderful challenge. Curate, don't just accumulate.
Curate, don't just accumulate. I think that's the mantra for the modern witch. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the stacks. We hope you found some clarity in the chaos.
Keep reading, keep questioning, and keep writing your own story.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.